If I say right now, this is speaking of you as a leader, other leaders. If I say James Orange or Shaq Daddy or any, what come to mind with you when you think of those type leaders? What would you think? A lot of people don't know who James Orange is.
Well, when you said that it doesn't take a whole lot of folk, you're absolutely right. Uh, it takes courage and persistence. James Orange was a committed, dedicated individual who just dealt with tough issues. Believed in when Maggie Bozeman and Julia Wilder were put in jail for vote fraud in Aliceville, Alabama. James said to Dr. Lara, "We got to go to Washington because the extension of the voter rights bill is coming up." Dr. Lara said, "Spiver, you think we can get a good crowd out of Alabama?" I said, "I can count on 10, 15, 20." And James said, "That's all we need to get started." But Spiver and I know how to get more people because these two ladies were strong leaders. And so the day of the trial, we went to the courthouse, and when they found them both guilty, and James and I said, "Well, it's time for us to go in action." We took over the courthouse. They had never heard of anybody marching through the courthouse. We started, the judge up there, "We're going to find you in contempt." I said, "We already found you in contempt. Your whole court system is contemporary." And James started singing, "Ain't gonna let," and when he started singing, every black person in that courthouse started marching with us. We marched up and down through the courthouse, up and down through the courthouse. And he told Doc Lara, "Now we need to take this and go to Washington." We organized right there with just James and I pulling people together, getting them singing, and we decided we were going to go from Aliceville to Washington, D.C. to extend the voter rights bill. And we did. It started with those two women. And we marched from Aliceville all the way up. They put them in jail in Tuskegee, Alabama. And they were in jail, and we said, "We're not going to leave Tuskegee until y'all let them out." So we had people coming from all over the country by now because we were dealing with the extension of the voter rights bill and free Maggie and Julia Wilder. And we surrounded Tuskegee, and we told the governor, "We're coming to Montgomery because y'all got two innocent black women in jail, and we're not going to leave. We're going to bring everybody to Montgomery, Alabama." Well, now, the governor didn't want that because that was a Pickens County problem, and his now has become a Montgomery problem. They released both of them. Shortly after that, I don't know how they did it. They were found guilty. They were adjudicated. They were wrong. They, did everything legally that white folk do, with that system. But somehow the governor said he had the power to release, pardon them right on the spot. Well, I guess they thought that was the end of it. Dr. Lara said, "We got to keep on going." And we went from Aliceville, from Montgomery, Tuskegee, North Carolina. If you remember, James Orange got arrested, took over, I can't think of that old senator name, took over his office. They put him in jail in North Carolina. And he called me and said, "Man, you got to come keep this movement going because they got me in jail now." So we got a group. We went and we took the thing and went all the way to Washington, D.C. That was the longest march in the history of civil rights, from Aliceville.
That's what I want people to hear.
And it just started with a few people.
I want people to hear how those marches go, and that's how y'all inspired me. It always started with a little. But if the issue, what I learned from you all, if the issue is here in Slidell, there's chances while I'm traveling, if I make enough noise, they got other people along the way have that same issue, and they'll join forces. Or they're the people who are going to stand against what's happening to you, and that's where your support comes. But there also was the ones that, everybody think the civil rights movement was that y'all could go to every church and every preacher accepted y'all and every teacher and politician and everything. It's like it was easy when people talk about it today.
Let me interrupt you, but tell you. You see this knot up on my head?
Mm-hmm.
In Tallahassee, Florida, at Florida State University, they would have black faces, a parade downtown. I met with Dr. Champion, who was the president of Florida State University, and said to him, "We're not going to have that anymore." I was in Tallahassee then. Reverend C.K. Steele was living. I said, "We're not going to have that." He said, "Well, it shouldn't be anyway. I'm going to order that stop, that they don't have this old blackface parade downtown." Well, I didn't trust white folk because I knew those fraternities and sororities wanted to do that. That was something they've been doing for years and years. And so I went right in front of the Capitol by myself. Here they come with the black faces, and they were marching with all that stuff all over their face, and one was on a horse in a buggy, and there were three women, I guess fraternity people and sorority people, and they all were dressed like the mammy, and they were singing Cotton Eye Joe and all that. I said, these white folk just don't intend to do right. I followed them up till I got right up to the where the governor and everybody was sitting at the state capitol. I said, I got to do something here. I got in front of the wheel. I laid down on the wheel. I said, "This is where it stopped. Now, if you're going to run, you're going to run over me, because I'm not going to move." I laid down. He said, "Move, nigga," yelling. The governor and everybody up there looking. Cameras rolling now. And he looking, and I said, "I'm not going to move." He said, "You're not going to move?" Told the music, "Get up." They rolled over me, drugged me down the street. The governor had to stand up then. "Stop it, stop it, stop it." Because they were trying to ignore it like they didn't see what was going on. But that was just one activity. That made national news. When they drugged me down there, and that's when I got this big knot on my head.
Reverend Alexander got dragged down the steps, up and down the steps.
Yeah.
Covered the world. You got busted in the forehead.
The point I'm
Congressman
making is,
John Lewis.
all it takes is, sometimes it just takes one person to spring into action to get something going.
So this is what people really, I would like from the, a lot of people don't know SCLC was somewhat founded here in Louisiana. And I tell people, but there were organizations going on elsewhere, but the first bus boycott, Louisiana.
That's right.
And a lot of these young people don't know that.
That's right.
Reverend Alexander and Dr. Jimison
That's right.
and them led the first bus boycott
That's right.
for Louisiana. Look like things start also in Louisiana. I wanted to go back to when you were saying about that small few.
Right.
A lot of things started in Louisiana. I mean, it went to other places, it grew. I tell people in Louisiana it didn't grow to the full expectation because Louisiana didn't know who Avery Alexander was or who Jimison was. These people were putting their life out there for us. But today, everybody a civil rights leader. But they ain't never went through what you all have been through. They ain't never been where I've been. Them crying. I had to cry a couple times. I cried, but I'm not going to quit. But Louisiana have a strong, this is what I want Louisiana kids, we have a strong history in the movement, starting with even you. Andy Young, Louisiana. We got to learn to respect what our state had and given. Even though you don't stay home, you still can make changes and take that roots that you got out of Louisiana, and y'all brought that to a lot of cities. Andy Young took his upbringing and brought it to Georgia, made major changes in Atlanta. Everybody want to go to Atlanta now because of the changes, but they don't know all of what took place. I remember Reverend Ernst, he had assigned us to positions. I was supposed to work down there with the fair when it blew up in Atlanta. Reverend Ernst said, you're going to be down there, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to work with the World's Fair. Look how many people got hurt in that. Look at, there's sacrifice sometimes is what I'm trying to say. Somebody got to be willing to sacrifice for other people to gain, but they need to know who made the sacrifice. I think about other names in the movement. My daughter asked me one day about Jose Williams. I say, well, Jose built a SCLC of his own, and I tell him the truth, in Atlanta. His SCLC at one time was getting more publicity and doing more fighting than the SCLC, and it was there. I say, so this man did great works. We got to tell the kids about those names. Because even if it's Black Lives Matter now or whoever, if we don't keep what the foundation and the leadership and the focal point out front, we lose direction. Because I learned from Reverend Alexander, watch who you march with. It's better to march with a few that you can control than a crowd that you can't.
That's right.
And so when I'm looking at what's happening when they busting windows and burning stuff down, that wasn't the kind of marching. I'm not going to get in that jump.
No.
So the kids, I tell them now, know who you're marching with. Know what the purpose is. See if they train to what they are doing. Because right now we also still have police brutality out there.
You mentioned Andy Young. In 1962, I went to Frogmore, South Carolina, and it was teaching the nonviolent workshops. That's where people from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, they came there for training. And Andy was teaching about nonviolence and what it means and how to protest and how to protect yourself. So there is no more Frogmore, South Carolina.
Okay.
There are no more training sessions. People need to know that. Organizations will fade unless there's some
Structure.
basic background foundation. In Frogmore, South Carolina, when Jim Bevel was there teaching and Andy was there, and I can't remember the old lady who actually started it. Her name escaped me right now. But she was doing it way back. Dr. King went there.
I know what you're talking about because I do remember hearing that. Because Rosa Parks told me she went there.
Yeah, I can.
At one time for training.
Yeah. So most of the civil rights people.
It was like a civil rights etiquette.
And they were trained in nonviolence, and so it was something that was put in your heart. You were taught that this movement is more than just having a demonstration, but it's a way of life that you got to understand, that you got to be committed and dedicated, because this is dangerous and people can get hurt.
That's right.
And you can get tired and you can get burnt out. And I'm sure you've gotten burnt out. I know I've had.
Oh yeah, but you have to pray hard.
But we've kept on going.
That's right. Sometimes we get to that stage where
I'm 82 years old and I'm still going.
You looking good for 82.
Every year I'm in Selma, and
I tell them I remember wasn't that many people that go to Selma, but a handful of us every year. And then when it got some publicity, the world came, and we still see Selma haven't changed much from where it was. And while we're going on Selma, Juneteenth. I tell people the first time I saw Juneteenth, I'm gonna go back and make you remember this. We was in Tallahassee, Florida, had convention, and Jewel invited me and Reverend Alexander to come over to Texas for the Juneteenth celebration. She was leaving convention, going back. She used to ride horses, her and brothers and cousins and stuff.
Right.
And Reverend Alexander said, I go to Juneteenth all the time. Julie said, but I go out into this little town, wherever it was. And I just found out the other day it was called Perryville or whatever. They got a college there. Mm-hmm. And y'all always used to do stuff around the universities with us for learning. But this particular university in that area stuck out in my head because we got there, we met Jewel in Houston. And then she was like I can't think of who else was it. I don't know if Johnson was there, that one or who, but we left and we traveled Highway 1.
Was Peter Johnson that too?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think Peter Johnson was there.
Yeah.
Because we met them, we left the convention and then went and met them
Right.
on that end. And I tell the story about it. I'll never forget this one. It's so funny. Even Reb died laughing at it. When we pulled out, it was me, Reb, and Mr. Wells. And I'm always remember, you joked with us, okay, Brian Crippling Grades have been hit the road, y'all be safe, let's pray. We hit that road that night and we broke down in Chiplin, Florida.
Mhm.
They had the tallest women's, Spiver came out. They had heard on the radio that them clans was coming. I ain't know nothing about no Chiplin, Florida. That black folks don't supposed to travel on this side. We supposed to travel on the other road. Oh, we come down the main stretch and Reb old car broke down. Reb say, Spiver told us to stay till tomorrow. Nope, he wanted to pull out that evening. We broke down. These white women came and saved us. And they went and got their husbands because they heard over the radio that these guys was going to come down and they was going to take care of us. And where we were, they could have killed us, pictured us anywhere. Nobody never knew. Only people knew where we had been left was the last person we had spoke to. And I mean, we broke down in Chiplin. Let me tell you.
Chiplin, Florida.
Chiplin, Florida. I'll never forget that place.
That wasn't a good place to break down.
We didn't know that. I know now. But we traveled, came back here, switched out our luggage like we always would do in SCLC and keep moving to the next spot. So we had to meet Jewel. So we traveled Highway 1. And you up there from Plaquemine. I'll be telling my people sometime about them plantations was still there. And Dr. Lowry had been coming back and forth down here with us protesting. You remember what that man named ran for office and he switched on us? Tarzan or something like that. Bill Tarzan or something like that.
He ran for what office?
He had ran for Congress or senator, and Dr. Lowry and all us helped him, thinking he was going to help deal with that plantation problem down there. He got in there and turned Republican and didn't even look back. But make a long story short, them people were still working on sharecropping. And we had been battling with them over and over down there about that sharecropping. Them kids wasn't hardly going to school. I'll never forget, they had a big old lady down there, her name was Jay. She followed us all through that area. And Rep. Alexander told me one day, we was traveling that, going back through when we was going there, he said, you know what this is? So we was on our way to meet you. I said, no. He said, I'm going to take you all the way. He said, this is the connection from Louisiana back to Texas. And this is where they've been traveling for hundreds of years. He didn't just say, them, that go back to the Indian. He said, we're going to take the old route. So we went down through all them old plantations and stuff, and back off in them cane fields. And Reverend Alexander knew where, he used to call it a greasy spoon. He knew where a greasy spoon was, and you know that every state you go to, he knew where a greasy spoon was. So we going down through them cane fields. I'm like, ain't no restaurant back here. Yes, it is. Just wait, Miss Gillum, you're going to see the best cornbread you want to eat. And we going through these fields, and these people working like they slaves, and we finally get back there and it opened up a little bit to a little house-like thing with our house. I said, where the restaurant? This the restaurant. It's the best food in town. I promise you, it was some good food back off in there, but now how he found it, I don't know. We traveled that whole thing and went on up to Texas and all the way through right before we crossed the line, there was a barbecue place. Rev said, I'm gonna take y'all to the best barbecue on this side of the line. We stopped on the line there, ate barbecue. So we went on in there, and he didn't take me. I was telling people during this Juneteenth thing, he didn't take me to Galveston first. We met Jewel and them in the town right outside. We met her in Houston, and we went to the little town outside of Houston, where the university was. And it wasn't until the other night, I've been trying to think of the name of the place, and they had popped up on TV. Somebody put it on YouTube. The little town where the people that left Galveston and moved to, and that's where they grew. How can I say, they freedom and excel to be lawyers, doctors, and business people. And what I'm saying is, because I want to go back, we don't talk about these places when we talk about Black Wall Street. We letting people take the history, make people think. Black Wall Street is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Which one of our grandparents went to Tulsa for Black Wall Street? Where was your Black Wall Street in your community? This is where we're at now.
That's right.
So I met a Black Wall Street right there in outside of Houston, due to Reverend Alexander. Now I see people are pushing for people to know about how they came out. They might have was last in Texas to find out about the Emancipation Proclamation. But we also had people like in Oklahoma on the Indian reservations who was in the territory, and territories did not have to give up slavery. So we had people until Oklahoma came in as a state in the early 1900s. Those people still was under slavery and bondage, and they're not too far from it today, but they were still under bondage. And we're looking at making history a small pocket. We don't want to show the whole picture of what is a Black Wall Street, how many big civil rights leaders we have. I think every state has its own Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Every state. Not taken away from Dr. King, not taken away from Rosa Parks, but each state have contributed. A lot of people don't know Dr. Lowry was right there in Mobile, Alabama when they was blowing his stuff up. You know what I'm saying? Fighting for the movement. I want the younger generation to understand, and some of the older people don't know because they wasn't involved. There's been a lot contributed, a lot of pains, and like you just say, a knot on your head.
Judge William McKinley Branch in Greene County, Alabama. Folk never heard of probably. The first Black probate judge in the United States of America. Utah, Alabama, where I live now. The first Black sheriff in the United States of Alabama. Utah, Alabama. From Tuskegee, Alabama.
Okay.
He's from Utah, and he became the sheriff in Tuskegee. He was the first sheriff, and Judge Branch was the first probate judge in the United States. Greene County has the only courthouse in the United States of America named after a Black person.
I've been honored to go.
William McKinley Branch. And folk don't know who William McKinley Branch is. But you were talking about local leadership. He was a school teacher, and he was a preacher, and he decided one time, listen, I'm getting out of this school system because it's wrong, and we're going to organize, and we're going to take over. The end of this month, July 29th, we're going to celebrate. You know, we do it every year.
I was honored to be with y'all in 2019.
That's right. And we're bringing people from all over the country again because it's when Black folk decide to stand up. And when you stand up, Dr. King said, can nobody ride your back?
That's right.
So the Black folks stood up in Greene County, Alabama, and took over the whole political structure. And so Greene County now, we had the first female probate judge in the country from Greene County, Alabama.
While you're in Greene
And
County,
because people stood up.
I learned about tracking in school system
That's right.
in Greene County,
Yeah.
Alabama.
Yeah.
And I came back here telling people about tracking, and they were like, what's tracking? Well, today we can look back and see the damage that tracking have done.
Yes.
And that was one lady that was with y'all, and you say she's still living.
Rose Sanders in Selma.
You know,
She worked with us.
and I'll never forget that song, There's a River Flowing, she used to sing.
Oh, you talking about Ms.
Miss
Rosa Carpenter.
That's right.
Talked with her yesterday.
Oh, come on now.
Do you know how old she is now?
Okay, come on, tell me. I'm close my eyes.
103. And still talking freedom. She's with her daughter in
I met
Washington,
her
D.C.
through Rose Sanders.
She's with her daughter in Washington, D.C. now.
What?
I said, Ms. Carpenter, are you coming down for the 29th? She said, if there's a bus, a horse, a mule, or a car, I'll be there.
Nothing's keeping her away.
She's coming.
And that's how I learned about tracking and what they were doing through these Head Start schools, putting kids on Ritalin and stuff. And you know, her and Rose took that very serious, and Hank Sanders.
Yeah.
Now, we can't talk about Rose unless you talk about Senator Hank Sanders. This man was a senator, well, a lawyer, a senator. But you get out there and march and protest with
That's
it just
right.
like Reverend Alexander.
Harvard trained.
Yeah, I
One of-
left that part out.
One of 12 children. Didn't know how he was going to get through Harvard. Went to Harvard. I think he said he had $26 in his pocket. It got his degree.
And now his daughter is a senator.
His
correct?
daughter, yeah.
Come on now. So Some people think if you fight, you get less. Sometimes you fight, you do come out on the short end, but somebody else can gain from your fight by you fighting. Sometimes it's not meant for you. But you know, Spiver, I look back, and I want you to hear me because we none promised tomorrow. I had the honor in my life and my kids to be around some of the world's greatest people, and you know that. Some of the top leaders in this country. But they was everyday people. Sometimes I think about different ones of them and get a little sad because I wonder what it would be like if they was here today with what's going on. A lot of them fought to see a black president, didn't live to get to see it. Reverend Orange was a major man not only here but even in Africa. People don't understand. Andy Young opened the door for a lot of the stuff that's going on with the Africa, United States stuff. There was Andy Young and
Osborne, don't forget
Reverend
Osborne.
Can't leave out Reverend Osborne.
Yeah.
That's who they used to call to tell him to shut me down and kick me out of SCLC. Because Reverend Osborne, him and Dick Gregory, how could I put it? They pilgrimaged over there and they had friends over there.
Jim Belver, don't forget Jim Belver. You know he's buried in Greene County.
No.
When we had his funeral several years ago, I didn't know Jim was there. Jim came, knocked on my door, and I said, "Where you going with that bald head?" You know, Jim had that shiny. He said, "You still calling me bald head?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, I'm right here now." He was with the Bishop Luke Edwards, who organized this community.
So he found a place he wanted to live.
So he moved to Greene County, had the funeral. People came from all over the country. Farrakhan, all of the national leaders, every national leader in the country came to Utah for that funeral.
See, a lot
You're
of
talking about
great
people-
leaders is all around us all the time.
And folk didn't know about Jim Bever. Dr. King would sit up and listen to Jim Bever. If there were 2 or 3 people, when Jim started talking, 25, 30, 40 going to be there. You're talking about a great mind.
I was blessed to be around a lot
Jim
of great
Bever had a great mind.
I tell people, I spoke the other day at a funeral, and some of the people like, "Oh, you give a good speech." I said, "I ain't even speak. I was just talking." I said, "But y'all don't know what a good speaker is." I've had the honor, and anybody in this room, I'm always bragging about y'all. I've had the honor to be with some of the best speakers in the world. And I sit back and think about Reb. He used to bring me. I tell people I didn't even know I wasn't even on the board when I wasn't on the board, because from day one, from me being with Reb, I was in the board meetings in SCLC. I wasn't out there in the streets. Y'all had me in the room with y'all. You understand? And that's why I can tell people, wasn't no money stealing, because a lot of times I used to be in there with you and Jewel and we counting the money. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't nothing to steal. We were taking the money, going back paying buses for people who children then came on these buses and don't have money to get back. People don't know what SCLC did. Like I told you, that behind the scenes.
It's interesting that you raised that. There's a young black man who has a casino that he has organized, and the state of Alabama is trying to ruin his reputation by saying that he didn't pay taxes. And he was on radio the other morning, and he was talking about his reputation and how important it is. And I was listening to him. He said, I've been trying to do everything I can, honestly, the best I can, and they're trying to ruin my reputation. So I called in. I said, well, my friend, let me tell you something. No grace is greater than God's grace.
Right.
So any disgrace, God's grace is bigger than any disgrace. And don't be worried about somebody trying to ruin your reputation.
Call to pick
I
you
said,
up.
let me tell you what happened to me. And I went on to tell him, how I went through that whole thing with SCLC where they tried to say we were stealing money, and we went all the way and went all the way to the district attorney in Georgia. And he said to us when we met, he said, "Mr. Gordon, I spent close to $1 million trying to find something where you did something wrong. And there was absolutely nothing that we could find. There was no money spent, no money stolen. I said, I know, because my wife is a good bookkeeper, and all the money that we had.
My daughter just walked in. Oh, stop. I want to cut. I want you to hear what the children feel that was born in SCLC.
Mm-hmm.
Aima, pull your mask off and tell. He need to hear what y'all saw as kids. What you say about his wife?
Oh, I said she the best thing anybody could have. I said she was all in one. She would keep your notes, have you laid out, and keep the books good. She was everything. And
Take the pictures good.
Take the pictures good. That's all you need.
So if the children, I wanted you to hear that. If the children that was with us know what we did, what I tell y'all all the time, we don't even worry about what the world say. The kids of us, see, y'all we had a transparent thing in that family where the kids got to see a lot.